Hello. Hi. That's your cue to be quiet. Hi, everyone. Good first day? Yes? Let's do it again. Great first day? You guys rock. I'm David Simpson still. I'm still the program director so far. Hopefully that doesn't change during the course of the 9 weeks of this summer. But I'm 65, so even if it does, it's okay. What are they going to do? Fire me? I don't know. Anyway, I'm the program director. My pronouns are he, him. We're so glad that you're here tonight. We have a great lineup for our first faculty talk of the 2026 Summer Workshop season. We're glad you're here. Tonight we're going to hear from poets Cameron Awkward-Rich and Franny Choi, who will both give readings. Woo! That's a spirit. And also we're going to hear from visual artist Autumn Wallace, who's going to give a presentation, and then we'll invite everybody to the stage for a joint Q&A, which is oftentimes the most fun part of the whole evening, so do stick around. Bit of housekeeping before we start. If you arrived late after check-in yesterday or before, and you haven't gotten a folder from us, check-in folder, you probably want it, because as Alexis describes it, it is a folder of fun. So do just get with Alexis and she'll give you one and make sure that you have everything you need. So do that. A reminder that there is no smoking anywhere on the property, inside or out, in any of the buildings of anything. So just a reminder for consideration of our neighbors. Thank you, appreciate that. A reminder that, how many went to Chandra's talk today? Was it so awesome? Yes. Right? Here's a big hand for Chandra. Where is she? There she is. She is a gift to the Fine Arts Work Center, for whom I am every day grateful. Tomorrow we have another talk at 12:30, lunchtime. We call it a brown paper bag, a brown paper bag, yeah. What do you call it? What do I call it? Brown bag lunch. Thank you. This time of day, my words start to just leave. I don't know where they go. Some people think that means that we give you lunch, but the typical understanding of the phrase, in my understanding, is that you bring your lunch. So for the brown bag list, so do bring your lunch or eat before. But Laura Shabbat will be talking tomorrow about four of the founders of the Fine Arts Work Center: past poet laureate Stanley Kunitz, renowned visual artist Robert Motherwell, Pulitzer Prize winning poet Alan Dugan, and his wife, visual artist Judith Shawn. You can learn about their lives, art, and contributions to this magical place. Bring your lunch and join Laura here. Laura's amazing. She's hilarious. And she has a super deep knowledge of the Fine Arts Work Center and the history of Provincetown as an art community. So not to be missed, 12:30 here tomorrow and every week. And remember, Friday is Student Showcase. That's right. I know you were going to say it. That's cool. I've noticed a couple of people have signed up for Student Showcase on line 6 and 7. They're doing, I'm not going to name any names. But wherever you sign up, I do encourage you to do so. You won't be sorry. It's the world's friendliest, most supportive audience that you will ever have in your whole life. And it's real. Is that not true? It is absolutely true. So it's across the way on the table between the two sofas. So do sign up. I don't care what line you sign up on. I swear to God. And okay, that's it. That's about that. Cam and Franny will be signing books at the back after the event this evening. And books by other members of this week's faculty are on the table in the back. And there are way more books in the library between the two halves of the gallery, so do check that out. And also we have a great show, as you know, in the gallery right now called A Second Pull, which is curated by past Falk Fellows Vicky Tomeko and Janice Redmond and features work by invited local artists. It's all for sale, and all proceeds benefit Falk programming. So check it out. Restrooms are down the hall on the left-hand side. There's a bubbler or like a fancy water fountain that can fill bottles. It's really cool. It's very green. Yeah. opposite bathrooms, so you can, anyway, I won't go there. And we also have, if a listening device would help you enjoy this experience more, we have them at the back. Just ask Alexis or Matt back at the back. And now I'll shut up. Oh, one more thing. Turn off your cell phones to silent. You don't want to be that person, please. And now I'd like to invite one of Cameron Awkward Rich's students, Joelle Simu. I was so close. Sorry. To introduce Cam. Come on up.
Let me get set up here. Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to begin by dedicating my participation here at AWC to Esther Lin, who is one of the leaders of a group called UndocuPoets, which supports and advocates for undocumented writers and formerly undocumented writers in the US. Yes. Yeah. And of the 3 UndocuPoets fellows selected each year, 2 of us, Valeria and myself, opted to join Franny and Cameron's Political Love Poems Workshop, which I think is quite telling that love is imperative in the metabolism of what binds us closer to each other and what threatens our lowercase humanities. And why this workshop was a no-brainer for me revolves also around my doctoral research, which contends with the poetics of Black trans masculinity. And Cameron's writing, both creatively and critically, has been at the bedrock of my formal inquiry and investigation of what trans might mean to the Black subject interpolated as masculine, as disabled, that one grounded in the pastoral and the cosmos, that one quiet and listening through nourishing dark, for which other forms and shapes might free us towards certain kinds of liberated lives. And personally, I'm not quite fond of getting proximate to writers that I adore privately or publicly. But so far, it's been quite enriching and quite lovely to be learning from Cameron and Franny both. And with that, allow me to formally introduce Cameron Awkward Rich, who is a poet and scholar who earned a PhD from Stanford University and is an associate professor at University of Massachusetts Amherst. His debut poetry collection, Sympathetic Little Monster, was selected as a finalist for the National Poetry Series, as well as the Lambda Literary Award. A 2018 Lexi Rudnitsky Editor's Choice Award winner, his second poetry collection, Dispatch, is described by the Pulitzer Prize winner Jericho Brown as a book with urgency that comes from its understanding that the world it cherishes is a world deteriorating. Yet it is a book of love poems no matter what. Awkward Rich is the recipient of fellowships from Cave Canem and Duke University, among others. His book, The Terrible We, Thinking with Trans Maladjustment, was published by Duke University Press. And from Persea Books, his third collection, An Optimism, quote, doesn't show, tell, or try to teach us how to be present to ourselves in this moment, says poet T.C. Tolbert. Tolbert continues, instead, we are brought into the interior of experience, an assembly of love which includes history, nature, the body, and the mind. Here, the sprawl of Blackness is reflected across the tenses a trans pastoral revelation. The beautiful thought, you, and also alive, alive, alive. Thank you, and welcome, Cameron Ockenridge.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Joel, so much for that beautiful introduction. I don't know, it's weird to live a life where all the time people are saying beautiful things about you and then you have to live up to them, you know? So I'll try. I first want to say thank you so much to Alexis, to David, to all of the staff at FOC for making it possible for us to be in this beautiful, clean, well-lit room together. Thank you to Andrea for continuing to curate Queer Week and bringing us all here. And thank you to all of you for wanting to hang out with us, you know? Yeah, there's nothing better than that. The last 2 times I've been here, I've given a very particular reading from my new book, An Optimism, which is a sort of long love poem to the poet, priest, kind of badass Pauli Murray. But this time, in the spirit of a different kind of love poem, I'm going to follow one particular arc of this book, which I think is encapsulated by the dedication, which is just for F, the beloved. So I'm going to follow that arc. I'm not going to banter while I do this, and I'm not going to explain what's going on. But you might, if you're listening, hear June Jordan. You might, if you're listening, hear Audre Lorde, Lucille Clifton, Araceli Skiermai, Mary Oliver, Emily Dickinson, Alexis Pauline Gumbs. They're all also in these poems. Yeah. But the first one I'll read is a joke, and then they'll get serious. Long distance. It's called something nearly unbearable. The room on your computer, inside of which the men shine with sweat and shea. They, the men, are passing another between them like a lit joint, though they the burning paper and he the lips. Plainly, we are in your bed, watching porn, though it's purely academic. Everyone merely a student of pleasure. Except for the boy, the wet coin, who by now has opened his second toothless mouth, swallowing from both ends, his eyes wide, and then he's gone, vanished into the body's thicket. And so the men, though never touching, do. All 4 of us, one wooded quiet, carrying his cry. We take a screenshot to remember this. What are we trying to understand? In the morning, I'll fly home. It will be months and months until I am again marked with your scent. I'd given up, you know, resigned myself to the idea of desire, the body, my body, a locked door. Love, if that is your name, I'm a practiced hand. I'm good at waiting. And meanwhile, the sugar maples, miles of them, flushed and damp between us. It was the best. You can do whatever you want between the poems. You can clap, or you can not clap. I don't really care. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It isn't that I was a boy moving darkly through the years of my girlhood, still mute kernel of future tense scarred by language, memory, form, etc. It isn't that. On the phone, my father tells me he thinks of me as someone daring, someone who rushes headfirst into situations that promise pleasure, sure, a portion of it, but mostly pain, inevitable, as pain is inevitable. I think you'd laugh at this description, because you know me now, a me who startles from his skin if you so much as walk unannounced into the room. You were always interested in your own injury, my father saying, rather than afraid of it. Do you remember that morning when, after sex, you did that thing lovers sometimes do in the movies? You moved across my body like a gardener, stopping to identify the foliage, what was roses, what weeds. There was all the obvious stuff, the scars like anchors on my chest, the tattoos. But the rest of it, anyway, I lied. I was afraid to tell you how little I cared for my life, for no reason, other than that it was and will interminably be mine. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, after Ahmaud Arbery. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And when I surfaced from the latest weather, torrent of bad wind shuttering the blinds, so that I, or something like me, was lost and wandering again, the stale room where I fear was born, though how it is impossible to say. When I surfaced, you were talking about children. A man, barely not a child, was dead, murdered, though it was months already between the scene and that name for it. The only way I know to outlast history is running. So that's what I do. I run. Even though even this action is a pantomime through which history, we all know it, speaks. A man, particular, is dead. And in the general body, the particular now, I am careful to keep my distance from the woman who is careful to smile at me in turn. When my father did not die, I didn't know. Nothing happened. And when he told me years later, when the scene found its name, I found something so like certainty it must have been. You don't have to, is what I heard him say to me. Live. You don't have to. Love. Forgive me, for I believed it. Believed. America is more and less itself than ever. Some days I run until my feet go numb, hum. Some days I am the darkest thing I'll see. Yeah. This next one is sort of long. It's about a lot of stuff, but it might be useful to know that I wrote it right after my university arrested 57 students for staging a sit-in, which they do all the time, students, which seemed to me like I don't know, it was like a terrible crack had opened in things, you know? And so this is about dissociating at a protest, though it won't seem like that. Playing dead. F is making dinner. F is moving through the kitchen at a pace. They make purposeful motions. They cut onions. They stir tiny jars of sauce. They become something like a blur in the distance. I have reached the end of the tasks I have assigned myself. I am putting myself on the shelf, I say, hoping what? At the rally, I huddle with the women. I am meant to be passing flyers through the crowd. I let the cold in. I stand impossibly. I ration out my breathing while I wheel above us in a harsh December sky. Waking up, I find myself somehow on the floor of the locker room wet. I am standing just beside myself, the shower running, the blood running from a cut above the eye. I can't say why I'm naked, kneeling in her bed again, her gorgeous scarf wound around my eyes. We both use sex, I think, as a scene to negotiate our positioning on the grid of power. I'm afraid it can't work between us. I am afraid in greener days I was made to touch it, a hand around the wrist. I wheel, and in doing so, I turn my back. The first time it occurred to me, it was a kind of consolation. A line I could cross at any moment. It became a choice I could make, a different choice. My father could have made a different choice. If he wanted to suffer and to live, then I thought he was choosing it. I wasn't keeping him there, suspended in the fraying air. My hand is numb with hurting, limp lying on the tile, the dog's persistent jaw. It is possible, I learned, to occupy the gap between sensation and event, to miss entirely the pain. I tell him I want to talk about the accident. My brain stutters at the thought. Blue coat, torn road, wet with rain. At the rally, I meant to hand out flyers. Flyers I made inviting others to our work. The work as yet undefined but vaguely, the work of making flyers, etc., the work of making rallies, etc., the work of sending emails, etc., of standing with conviction in scripted meetings, conducted in inhuman grammar, so that our students might, so that we might instead say the words Free Palestine and move somehow toward the imagined unimaginable that other syntax names. I am wheeling above myself. A man is shouting. There is laughter in the ambulance. The thought occurs to me. My students are so taken by June Jordan's conviction in the generative force of language, the idea that the word could represent and then deliver into reality what the word symbolized. I am not so sure. I try to be. I try to speak, though huddled with the women, all I say is men in low conspiratorial tones, like I know what I mean. The wand of the ultrasound, the doctor's chatter as he rests between my knees. Afterward, the long ride home. F, when they move in, are carrying a future unimaginable to me for reasons I can and have and will call political, but really the residue of ordinary anger at one's father who could only bear what he could bear and bore it. It wants to tell you, I mutter. I bracket out the baby says a word that means mother and her face turns. The baby says a sound that means monster and the world drones. At the rally, I huddle with the women. I speak the words that mean I carry June in my pocket, in my as yet unreclaimed capacity for want. My life closed twice. Liz, I think her name was, the woman my mother brought me to. We played cards in her perfumed office, lavender, tulips, bowl of wax fruit. I was 10 and wanted to die. I don't know why I'm here again. I lived, obviously I lived. When I was older, but still a child, not innocent, but foolish, I looked up from my solitary suffering. I learned the history of men. I pointed to a spot on the map they rendered. I said, then, built my common life in a room at the end. If it's true, what they say, that poetry is written with the knowledge of and against death, that it is a beacon, a bulwark, then love, I confess, I have been no poet. Outside, a hawk circles overhead. 4 cops circle a woman dressed all in red. I circle the apartment as you sleep, happily, in the next room. Just this once, I want so desperately to be proven wrong. Okay, are we okay? Okay, great. Here's another longish one, which is more of an essay, a kind of fractured essay than a poem. It begins with an epigraph from Audre Lorde. We begin to give up, of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation, and with the numbness which so often seems like their only alternative. Audre Lorde. The poem is called Trans Study, Uses of the Erotic, and I guess it begins with a joke. Transsexual is a word my students don't understand how I could want. I get it. I do. No one likes to imagine their heart enabled by capital, power, knowledge, etc. No one wants to know the field first as boundary. Who wouldn't want instead to roam? There's a scene that sits for me at the center of this story. There, not even the moon is cutting through. I'm outside and can't imagine how my body is moving. It's in the groove, not a good thing exactly. The groove is something we fall into, a rut, rutting against. Anyway, I'm outside the room I am inside, which is perfectly ordinary. The trouble. I used to think there was a series of movements, at the end of which, joy. One trouble with the transsexual is the history of her description, at the boundary of the field. A body so alienated from itself it is functionally dead, a monstrous fetter. Quote, he lives only for the day when his soul is no longer being outraged by his body, when he can function socially, legally, and sexually. In the meantime, he is often dead to pleasure, to the world outside her head. Take Lord's tiny, intense pellet of yellow coloring perched like a topaz just inside the clear skin. If yellow pellet stands for capacity for joy, then you have to admit that capacity unfolding in and because of war. Likewise, the transsexual unfolds. I is never actually a dead space, I'm trying to convince myself. It wants only what it is possible to want, which is more than we know. I want the word I tell you as a record, a figure for how the barely possible becomes through feeling a kind of life. In the field, we lie on our backs and watch the sky move overhead. We sprawl, we holler, we stand quiet as stones in our own pockets. We wander, we roam, we come back home, though in the meantime, the descriptions changed. Tomato, salt, bright sting of the needle, monstera, buttercup, breeze through the summer window, writing a good poem, moving into sunlight against the body of a woman I love. Suddenly, rain. I'm going to read two more. One, which is sort of hard to read, and one about my couch. I guess the thing to know about this, or the joke I like to tell before I read this poem, is that it is about how much I hate cutting the grass. Yeah. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. When walls were raised, we swore we'd be. We swore we'd be a raft inside. A raft inside the whale that we were sovereign of. We sovereigns of, though everyone, yes, everyone was party to the angel of the pending storm. The rising storm, our little raft, our sprawling raft inside its eye where everything was calm. Oh, calm against the brackish wall, the bracing wall that was the world that was somehow ablaze with hyacinth. With hyacinth inside the whale, inside the walls, we lived our lives. We lived our lives of mowing grass, of shearing grass, despite the times. Despite the times, the children gone to future war, the future war of what we made, our money and our rage against the hyacinth, the children who were made to die in future's eye, for future's eye could not abide. Will not abide, I say, inside, I stay inside, the whale and I, we cut the grass or failed to sow. We failed to, and our little plot of life a raft, our little plot grown wild, a facsimile of wildness, a wilderness conditioned by the boundaries of propriety, the lines drawn in, the wilding grass, the leaves of grass divided from what's not by law, What's not by law, the whale, the kids, the hyacinth, oh violet fire, war of life against its end. Against its end, we built a raft. We built a raft, we thought, and now we thought, and now we what? We want, and now we watch. We wait, we watch, we wait, we watch. We hang up shelves, we paint our rooms, we dance around each other slow. We hear the news, we memorize the names, the names, the names we say or don't the lost love, don't the lost already know what's rising, love, we rise, we pace, we make, we weather on inside the whale. I've got the story wrong, but love, I want so much. It's selfish, yes, it's selfish, but I hope we get to live like this. I hope it isn't how we die. Actually, you know what? No, I won't do that. I won't do that to you. It's enough of me. So I'm just gonna read this one. Thank you for hanging out with me in my little feeling boxes. This one is called For the Record. I don't know how I began, how I entered this life of making repeatedly the gesture, of turning the same gold light through the same window so that it might come to matter less, the turning, the easy epiphany, which by definition cannot be. I admit there is a certain artfulness I lack fundamentally, and by virtue of my lack of dedication to the idea a poem might carry anything. Look at me. I have no boat. I have only the old news a poem might strike readily like a match or like a hammer, minuscule hammering against a dumbbell me who will not sing. Or that's what I said, didn't I? During the lean years I was fed and fed but couldn't for the life of me, I couldn't swallow. I buried what was given me in a series of someone else's yards, readying, I said, for the winters come and gone. Love, the poem is not a craft I steer to reach you. Here I am. For years, my father was always threatening to take us, my sister and I, to see the Liberty Bell. It was a kind of joke I didn't understand. The bell that rang apocryphally for freedom, and then in the long wake for spectacle stood in for freedom. All those years I refused to look at it. I was so bored. Another symbol cracked under the weight of what it stands for, standing being its only function. Love, I'm writing to you from our living room, our extravagant blue couch. I'm trying to be unafraid, a little hammer hitting the same note until I, which is not the same I, can hear it, and if not exactly believe it is meant for us, then nonetheless live as though. Thank you.
I think we need to give Cam some more applause, please. Woo! Thank you, Cameron, for that wonderful reading. And Joelle, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to invite one of Franny Choi's students, Matt Ford, to the stage to introduce Franny. Please give a welcome to Matt.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Thank you again to the Fine Arts Work Center, also known as FAWC. I'm just going to have fun saying that all week. FAWC. Yeah, okay. Franny Choi opens their latest collection, The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On. Thank you. Let me borrow your book. I'm going to buy one in a second. In the eponymous poem with the lines, quote, "Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of boats. Boats of prisoners, boats cracking under sky iron, boats making corpses bloom like algae on the shore," unquote. She ends the collection in protest poem with the lines, "I was possible with a sentence that would have made it true. So this isn't a sentence, it's a sound. It's a blade spinning. It's a wave that stutters at the air until the plate glass cracks, unquote. To borrow a word from our workshop session this morning, encased between these lines are dozens of miniature worlds of wonder, of heartbreak and holding, of war and love, of interracial union and feminism and technology, of screams, fear, joy, astonishment, questions, quandaries, and another word from our class, possibilities. Franny Choi says that, quote, "Poetry helps me to have a conversation with history. It's hard for me to understand the past as a series of events. Poetry allows me to understand history by embodying it from my own subjective position and to track the ways that those imprints of the past show up in my sentences," unquote. Franny's work makes me feel seen, valued, and understood. Their poems are significant and unforgettable gestures toward knowing others and how we all fit into this thing, this encasement called life, and deeper, beyond the boundaries of the living and spiritual worlds. Their work wakes me up to the smells of both coffee and sulfur, of destruction and love. In my short time of being under their tutelage as a student, so far, their brilliance as an artist and care as an educator has already made me know myself and others on a much more precious level. I pray their work teaches you to know yourself and others too. Not done yet, almost there. Franny received a BA at Brown University and an MFA in poetry from the Helen Zell Writers Program at the University of Michigan, go Michigan, where she won the Hopewood Award in Poetry and Drama. Her poetry collection, Soft Science, a fabulous title, won the Elgin Award for Science Fiction Poetry. She also co-edited the anthology We the Gathered Heat, Asian American and Pacific Islander Poetry, Performance, and Spoken Word. Other notable works include Floating, Brilliant, Gone from 2014, which might be my favorite title, like ever. Death by Sex Machine from 2017. And The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On from a couple of years ago. And her up-and-coming body of work, We the Radiant Things, Notes on Being Alien and Becoming Cyborg, coming later this year. Franny is the founder of the BIPOC writing retreat Brew Forge and is the 2024 to 2026 Poet Laureate of Northampton, Massachusetts. Woo, woo, woo. Their work has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, the Paris Review, and elsewhere. Please offer Franny your eyes, ears, and hearts, and allow yourself to float away and return.
Oh my goodness. Oh yes, this is what I'm going to be reading. I will first just say, first of all, Matt, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Yeah, thank you. It's wild to, it must be wild to be like, all right, let me meet this person, and now I'm gonna say a bunch of like things about them. But I appreciate the generosity with which you read and talked about my stuff, and it's so lovely to have you and Joelle and all of our students in our class. Thank you, David. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, everybody who has made it possible for us to gather here. Thanks, Andrea. This is so cool. And also, thanks, Cameron, for making my favorite poems. It's really cool to, like, a pro tip, like, marry your favorite poet. But, yeah. Yeah. Cameron, I was like, oh, you made me cry as he sat down, and he was like, that's my job. So, also, I will say that that I'm going to start my timer so that I don't do this forever. But that first poem starts with a line like, "It's called something nearly unbearable, the room in your computer where something something." And every time you read that poem, the name of the website just floats through my mind, which is just it's this beautiful poem, and then just what floats through my mind is machofuckers.com. You know, so. It's not an ad for them. I'm just saying that that's my experience. But anyway, yeah. So Cameron read some really incredibly beautiful stuff, and then I'm going to talk about robots. That's what I'm going to do. But yeah. So this is from the. I'll read like a kind of shortened, clipped version of one of the essays in the essay collection, which is coming out this year. Prose. That's hard, it turns out. And then if there's time at the end, I may read like an itty bitty poem or two. Okay, but it might just be this. So, anyways, it's called I Roomba. I just laughed at my own title of my poem thing. Yes, I think I'll say that it's sort of about robots. It's sort of about. A show, a British television show starring Gemma Chan, and it's also mostly about one's gushy feelings inside. So anyway, here it goes. We named her Rosie. She was a gift from my parents, who had seemed mildly horrified by the state of every apartment I've ever lived in. The day she arrived, I did a little dance. It hardly mattered that she had no face. "Good job, Rosie," we said when she navigated out from under a chair. "Oh, Rosie, I'm sorry," I said, untangling a yarn ball from her teeth as she blinked in polite distress. I slid merrily around the hardwood in my socks, clearing shoes and backpacks out of her path. She and the cat kept things civil. I was sorry when she died. It was the middle of the semester when Rosie suddenly stopped working, and Cameron and I were both too overwhelmed with teaching to figure out the repair process, so I went back to vacuuming, by which I mean I mostly stopped vacuuming. Rosie had always been less of a time saver anyway than a promise, a slow, cylindrical portal to the house of my imagination, where fiddly figs thrived in natural light, and the floors were so clean you felt compelled to crawl rather than walk back in your shoes if you forgot your keys. The ideal house, that is, was an extension of the ideal me, a properly Korean and feminine me, an attentive me who could make things gleam and grow instead of slowly ruining them. I took up a habit of making fun of my domestic failings, which was either a way to flaunt my tiny rebellion against the ideal me or a path I could cut through the shame of failing to live up to her. Like my jokes, Rosie cast a protective sheen of camp over the whole situation. Sublimely unaware of her ridiculousness, she bounced from wall to wall, distracting everyone from her real job, to help me avoid the humiliation of using my own body to keep up the house, well cast as it was for the role. The Roomba floor vacuuming robot first came on the market in 2002, made by the company iRobot. This is the part that is really just about robots. Founded in 1990 by 3 roboticists from MIT, iRobot spent most of its first decade developing robots for space and military operations. In 2001, its PackBot made headlines when it was used to search the ruins of the World Trade Center for survivors after the 9/11 attacks. The following year, a fleet of PackBots was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, while in the US, iRobot released the Roomba. I think those things happened in the same year, armed with capabilities initially honed for the battlefield. But its military lineage was largely overshadowed by the flurry of comparisons to everyone's favorite robot maid. Remember Rosie, the clunky metal automaton maid who kept the TV cartoon Jetsons carpets spotless? That's a really hard sentence to say. Well, she has been downsized in favor of a Frisbee-sized model, began a review of the Roomba in US News & World Report soon after its release. Public reception raised from confusion to geeky delight to disappointment about the machine's limitations. Quote, "While it is more fun than vacuuming yourself, it is not as effective," conceded a New York Times review. More than one outlet questioned whether the novelty of having a real-life home robot was worth the $200 sticker price. Still, by 2004, over 1 million units had been sold. As iRobot developed its sensors and navigation systems, the Roomba got steadily better. Let's see. Oh, yes. Okay. by the early 2010s, the Roomba had solidified its place as the most widely adopted domestic robot ever invented. And in 2021, when sales surged as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the company was valued at $3.5 billion. It has since fallen from grace and recently got bought out by a Chinese company. According to Henny and Mani of Carnegie Mellon University's Robotics Institute, the reason for its success was simple. Quote, "It does one thing and it does it really well." But what if you could have one robot at home that could do all the things well? That dream has been around since at least the late 19th century. In a short story by the writer M.L. Campbell, published in 1893, called The Automatic Maid of All Work, an inventor promises his wife that his new automaton will take on all the household chores, from preparing breakfast to chopping firewood. It doesn't end well. The robot eventually chases a cow into a nearby river with an axe, and many researchers seem to have taken this warning to heart, focusing on robots that take on specific tasks like folding laundry or transporting objects from room to room or vacuuming. But in our wider imagination, the clamor for an automatic maid of all work persists. News outlets have been announcing that she's just around the corner for at least the past 35 years. There was Hubot in 1981, Nuvo in 2005, Maruzi in 2010. In 2018, tech reporters called Aeolus a step closer to the Jetsons. A few years later, media reported excitedly on Samsung's Bot Handy. This was it. And then in 2021, Elon Musk accelerated the race to build an all-purpose humanoid robot with the announcement of Optimus, prompting a surge of competitors despite having little more than a mock-up to show investors. Some of you may have seen that in lieu of a prototype, they had when they announced it, they had this guy dance on stage in a spandex robot costume because they didn't have anything to show for it. At the time of this writing, buzzy articles about the 1X Neo, the Figure 03, and the Aptronic Apollo are making the rounds. A 2026 report from Barclays Research estimated that the $2 to $3 billion global humanoid robot industry could surge to $200 billion by 2035. Who is she? This mechanical maid everyone is trying so hard to conjure into existence. What is this job we're so desperate to give her? Where's our Rosie, demands an article in Time magazine. Mine's downstairs, carrying an enormous weight, though she hasn't moved in months. In the British Channel 4 series Humans, Gemma Chan vacuums, cooks, wipes counters, pours coffee, folds laundry, packs lunches, reads bedtime stories, takes out the trash, loads and unloads the dishwasher. She pushes the iron in long, steady strokes across the shirts. After sex, she pulls up her panties and rises to clean herself. She moves through the rooms without making a sound. At night, she plugs herself into the kitchen wall to charge. I won't go into all of my analysis of this show, this British television show, Real Humans, and yeah, there's more here about the history of the entanglements between Asian women and Asian womanhood and sex and subservience and the domestic labor industry. But I will just skip ahead to this bit. What is the word for the particular madness that comes with encountering a shape for your life that has not, by certain acts of luck, trapped you within it? I've never been forced into the position of the Asian robot maid, but despite this, or maybe because of it, she has haunted my life. She was in the room when a housemate got mad about the mess in the kitchen, when two white women in a row mistook me for an employee in the grocery store, when I experimented with cam sex and men gave me directions for how to touch myself. She was particularly loud with my ex, who I'll call B, who was white and had very specific ideas about how the dishes ought to be stacked. B was the kind of person who would get on his knees and scrub the inside of the toilet bowl with a sponge. Next to that kind of dedication, I was embarrassed to be so squeamish. What I'd previously touted as a rebellion against feminine ideals of cleanliness was, in this context, suddenly repackaged into a lack of humility, or worse, laziness. Maybe a more generous way of putting it is that, for B, cleaning was a way to promise we would show up for each other, to say we didn't mind getting our hands dirty in the process. So when, one summer day, he suggested that we spend the afternoon cleaning out his car, I jumped at the opportunity to seem willing and industrious, even cheerful. Underneath, there was another me, watching as I bent to vacuum under the seats. Sweating through my shirt in the July sun, I tried to quiet her by telling myself it was a matter of egalitarianism or love. This was the only way it could work, the picture I made as I knelt on the asphalt, his dust in my face. We're in this together, I scolded myself. Stop being paranoid. I'm a cool girlfriend. I was gonna take a sip of water. Okay. I'll skip ahead a little bit more here. I watched the first season of Humans, the show, in a marathon session over a few late, lonely nights in the depths of grad school. That Thanksgiving, I flew to B's New England hometown to spend the holiday with his family, and everyone was, as usual, very nice to me. No one mistook me for the nanny or treated me like anything but a member of the family. I smiled, I chatted, I helped chop vegetables, I played with the kids, to whom I was practically an aunt. I was proud of how seamlessly I performed this role. And then, in the picture that was later uploaded to Facebook, there I was, the only exception in a sea of white, there in the corner, clutching the dog whose hair was black like mine. No one had treated me anything like a maid, but there was a new problem. I was becoming a wife. Once, sometime in late adolescence, my parents had a fight. I don't remember what it was about or who won, only that it must have been a bad one, bad enough to touch that room inside my mother where she kept her shame. It's only now, some 20 years later, that I've realized how often she was trying to wrestle that door shut. At some point in the fight, my father complained about the shoes in the entryway. Look at this mess, he might have said, to illustrate some deficiency. It stands out to me now as one of the only times I remember him berating her about housework. I wonder if she became furious when he said it, or if it's my own fury that rises now to meet this memory. A few hours after the fight, we left to catch a movie. We, my two siblings and I, all tumbled out of the house and piled into the minivan, and my mother was, as usual, the last one to come out. As usual, my dad paced the driveway as my mother rushed through her last tasks, lotioning her hands, putting away food, turning off the lights. Come on, he called, or maybe he started to, and stopped. Because my mother was at the doorway, bent over the shoes. There was no spite in her movements, no revenge. As the engine ran and the cicadas kept time overhead, we watched her through the open garage door. With quick, diligent movements, my mother straightened the shoes into neat rows. She seemed almost cheerful as she did it, a good sport. It was as if she was reassembling some little offering that had gotten toppled over, wooden block letters spelling out the words good and mother. We waited. Our mother was busy putting her goodness back together, and we had nothing to do but watch. In his 2015 book, Enchanted Objects, Design, Human Desire, and the Internet of Things, I think that's what we call it, MIT Media Lab researcher David Rose, no relation to the Schitt's Creek character, offers 7 principles for designing successful household technology, including things like glanceability and affordability, to provoke. One thing that designers do is to use cute interfaces and pleasant chimes to provoke feelings of affection rather than suspicion or annoyance toward our smart devices. He calls this the principle of lovability. In one of the earliest reviews of the Roomba, the author makes no attempt to hide how much the thing has endeared itself to him. The little beeping guy, no longer a stranger but a member of our household, has a personality, it reads. You root it on in its quest. Maybe, the implication goes, that's enough of a reason to keep it around. Cameron's jobs are dishes, laundry, and remembering about trash day. Mine are floors, lunch, and whatever else seems fun to do at the time. To say it this way, privileging the sonic qualities of the sentences might suggest an evenness to the division of labor in our household. It's not even. He does more, or at least I feel convinced that he does. It's possible that even if we tallied up all the hours and divided the work clean down the middle, I would still have this nagging feeling that I wasn't pulling my weight. Or, to be more precise, there is no level of housework equality within the tight space between us that would make it feel just. The Asian robot maid haunting me falters and shorts when it makes contact with the history of Black domestic work haunting him. What would clean down the middle even mean for us? We are, as always, up against too much. We've each absorbed too many lessons about what we are for, the thing we can do and do well that makes us worth the sticker price. One afternoon when we're both working from home, Cameron comes downstairs to find me washing yesterday's dishes as leftovers bubble on the stove. Sorry, sorry, he says, bounding into the kitchen. No, sorry, what are you saying sorry for, I say, but I don't look up. I'm concentrated on the baking sheet I'm scrubbing, which I usually avoid when it shows up in the sink. I don't like how unwieldy it is, how hard it is to balance as I scrub, how I always end up slopping some water out of the sink or accidentally shooting a bit up into my face when the sponge hits the edge. It's no great act of courage to wash one baking sheet, I know, and still I feel a little brave, a little good, doing this odious task that my partner does not, in fact, mind a bit. Do you see how helpful I can be? I'm not so useless after all, am I? Not so selfish, not a waste. Humming a little to myself, I notice Cameron then in the corner of my vision. He's wavering, balanced on the balls of his feet, his eyes wide and watchful. I see it then, the scared thing inside of him which I flushed out in my attempt to protect the scared thing in me. Cameron, I say, are you nervous because you think I'm doing your job and you think that means you're in trouble? Yes, he admits. With gusto, I try to assure him otherwise. I tell him how much I love him. I lean over to kiss his cheek extravagantly. He still looks worried. Am I conscripting you into labor, he asks. You are not conscripting me into labor, I say. Okay, I promise. Okay, he says, and practices trying to believe me. This is a little routine we run through, the admission, the reassurance, the settling of terms. There's a sweetness to the repetition, though maybe also something a little sad. Nobody is in trouble, nobody is forced, nobody is mad, we assure each other again and again. An uglier part of the truth is sometimes I am mad, for no reason I can ever name. Sometimes when moving around the kitchen, clicking on the stove, scrubbing a pot, sweeping the floor, I start inexplicably to fume. It's as if someone's pressed run on a program I don't remember installing, and I can't stop it, only watch as my inner monologue processes the commands. Why do I have to do everything? Imagining what I could accomplish. Must be nice to spend all day. I wish queerness eased it. It helps. Of course it helps. And yet in some ways it was easier to demand the separation between lovability and housework in the context of a straight relationship. Or if not easier to do it, easier to believe in the righteousness of the demand, to cling to it like a raft in the steady current of compulsory heterosexuality. Don't love me for my ability to do housework, I could say, and trust in the solidity of what I was pushing against. It was a terrible current, an old and awful joke, yes, but a familiar one. The absence of a unidirectional flow of power, if such a thing ever really does exist between two people, doesn't make power disappear. If anything, untethering ourselves from certain scripts about men and women just means we find ourselves tripping over those scripts in more unexpected places. We fumble through rooms, hitting obstacles as we go, learning the contours of this particular terrain between us, this strange new home made up of utterly predictable furniture. The hard truth is that there is no chore, no gesture, no series of codes that can guarantee that my love stays, that he won't one day give a little sigh of despair as he steels himself to enter our door. There is no amount of goodness we can perform, no amount of laundry or vacuuming or egalitarian splitting of duties or saying the right thing or scolding ourselves or any other kind of discipline that can ensure our safety from the threat of loneliness. Lovability is something else, something other than all the other functions that a technology performs in the home. I left B eventually, not because he wasn't a good and caring partner, a conscientious cohabitant, a thoughtful friend, a solid dude, not even really because he was white and straight. I left because, eventually, my life with him stopped feeling like my life, which I guess is just another way of saying I fell out of love. Nobody is in trouble, Cameron and I tell each other over and over. It means, among other things, that no one is asking anyone to be a wife or a maid or an excellent appliance. It is so much more terrifying than that. My job is to be who I am and to accept the love that does or does not arrive as a result. Good God. It is the hardest job I have ever done. I wish it on each of us. I think as promised, I'll close out with one last poem, and I'll just do the itty bitty one that is the last poem in the book that Matt alluded to, just for time. It's called Protest Poem. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm so excited to hear Autumn's and see Autumn's presentation. Thanks for being here. FOC is the best. It's really, really fun. Protest Poem. Short. The air's so thick with fury it shakes the windows. Nothing cuts through walls like rage and its promises. No peace is a drill. Joy you have to charge to make work. The cheer that follows each verse, an ekphrastic for the as-yet unbuilt museum of what we had to survive to make paradise from its ruins. It's okay if you don't believe me. No one could have told me I was possible with a sentence that would have made it true. So, this isn't a sentence. It's a sound. It's a blade spinning. It's a wave that stutters at the air until the plate glass cracks. Thank you all so much.
I'd say we're off to a good start, wouldn't you? Oh my God, more applause for Franny. Thank you, Franny, that was amazing. And thank you, Matt, that was another really lovely introduction. Where are you? There you are. Thank you, it was really nice. And also, can we have a big hand for Andrea for curating this week? They are amazing. We're gonna hear from them on Wednesday night, right? Wednesday, yeah. So don't go anywhere. All right, now I'd like to invite one of Autumn's students to this stage to introduce Autumn. Please welcome Catherine Dion Ashley.
Hey everybody. I feel so relaxed into the words that everyone just spoke. You want to just take a deep breath? Like, I need to step outside of the world that you guys created and you guys created to focus on autumn. So let me pull up my little notes. Okay, hi, I'm Catherine, hey. I'm so excited to be rounding out our first day of workshops here by hearing from our faculty. In our class today, we were tasked with bringing two images, one that we loved, one that we hated. Feels clear. And then Autumn asked us to say things that we loved and hated about the images we loved and the images we hated. And I watched my peers twist and turn and give in. And we realized that we all inherently find things that we love inside of things that we understand that we hate. And from there, action comes, right? And this active approach of igniting the self, stewarded by an instructor who celebrates the search of the self through this like whimsical nexus. We watched Betty Boop today, so we were having fun. It has me so excited with where the week will go and what we will learn and what this mindset will give us. And, you know, in the art and design world, if you listen close enough at an opening, you'll hear whispers of FOC. You'll hear someone say that perhaps their time in P-Town distilled, shattered, and rebirthed their creative block into something of movement and meaning or whatever. But the undercurrent of these comments is something that is very true of this place. A pulsating, lively community that you can't help but come back to. Much like Autumn Wallace, who has shown work and taught and been celebrated at FOC many a times. Autumn Wallace, who you can address with they and she pronouns, is a graduate of the Tyler School of Art at Temple University. They are a visual artist who works across media to create paintings and sculptures that examine human sexuality, gender, and the Black femme experience. Influenced by early 90s cartoons, Byzantine aesthetics, Baroque style, and what Wallace describes as low-quality adult materials. Autumn Wallace's work generates a sense of fluidity whereby figures defy spatial, social, physical, emotional, and psychological boundaries. So welcome, Autumn.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that introduction. Oh my God, the writers. My favorite power couple of the year, maybe the century. I'm not a writer, so I don't have anything more eloquent to say than that, but I have notes to discuss afterwards. Oh, we're here. So I'll have a little bit of my usual shtick for the people who have seen my talks before, but for the people who have not seen it before, it's all gonna be new, which will be nice. But I've remixed it enough so it's different through the end. So, nervous, right? My name is Autumn. How do I, here we go. I'm the first presentation of the day. Here we go. Okay. No, second presentation. You were perfect. I don't know how to use a remote. My name's Autumn, but it would have been winter because I was born in the blizzard of '96, but that's too cold, or emerald, but my mom didn't really like the color green, so. Anyway, I will now review a little bit of what was said before just to get more into my story. So I was born in Philadelphia, city of Philly Elmo, cheesesteaks, gritty with the googly eyes, pole climbing, which apparently came from Italy, which is cool, professional Jeep flippers, because why not? When you win, flip a car. And I was born there to a New Age hippie mom and a fundamentalist Christian dad, which I've heard now they rebranded as evangelicals. So that upbringing was strange, to say the least. It resulted in a highly permeable sense of self, me sock, I am sock, and a body of work that just loves the dynamism and the randomness, the non sequiturs of 90s cartoons, the strangeness and the peculiarity of Byzantine and Baroque styles, the elongation of mannerism, and, you know, for the polite company, the low quality adult materials come in there every once in a while. And it's turned everything that I see into fodder for creation. Squish, folds, wrinkles, cinches, sweat, sag, and drool. I would occasionally even make fun of my friends a bit in my work because they didn't know, and that's fine. And it also results in no one ever asking me to do their portrait, which is a relief. They don't think it's flattering for some reason, I don't know why. So all of this started to get me into thinking about interpersonal relationships, like how can you reward your partner for their achievements when not everybody really likes a medal? Or between partners, is there gaslighting going on, but does the gaslighting really matter if the carpet is flame retardant as a result of California Ordinance 315-4? And what's more interpersonal than what's in your own head, or just personal, like the closet you may have been raised in that you peek out of and see other people living the life you want very freely? Maybe, lost myself, I'm coming back. And Maybe it's just thinking of those clear nights you were raised with, having fireflies to illuminate those feelings you kept in the dark. And also going just outside of your head to the bonnet that keeps coming off of your head at night and wondering if there's a demon trying to ruin your perfectly respectable hairstyle. And speaking of respectable, I started to think about the little box of respectability so many of us are raised with. People who were stifled, and they are now stifling you under the weight of their expectations. Presentation, how to carry yourself, how to look, how much space to take up or not. Maybe if they had hypnotized it in, it would have been harder to shake off with time. Quick tangent on this, did you guys know if you hold a chicken's head down on the ground and draw a line, it'll just fall asleep? Fun fact. And on top of these home expectations, chicken facts, right? Who knew? Speaking of these home expectations, you also are thinking about the vivid moments where the respectability politics came out and started to be reinforced by your peers and not just your parents. Following the idea of vilification, I started to think about invasive species. What does it take for a plant or bug to be seen as worthy? What is it about them thriving that justifies their destruction? Sometimes the work just hyperfixated on a moment just before a decision was made, a moment that you remember clear as day, a day when you learn the meaning of should and don't remember what happened afterwards. Thinking about love and affection even further, I somehow thought of these two characters that saw animals get more love than people more often than not, and decided to become two people in a horse costume, and it worked out for them. Horses are a common motif in my work. I was never personally around them much, but my grandfather, who will come up again later, took care of them when he was a sharecropper in North Carolina, and always had horses on TV when he was babysitting, so maybe that had a little bit of it. Further into interpersonal relationships, I started to think about care during the pandemic. And I stumbled across this incredible article on WikiHow that actually still exists called How to Hug Yourself 10 Steps with Pictures. With pictures! And I made my own zine. I think it was called Veggie How. I have a couple left, but yeah. And I started to think about imaginary friends and how people grow up and abandon them, but what if they still existed? What if there was one purpose-built for adults? So I thought of this character, Diary, who I chose another painter whose subject matter was also a way for people to find hope and belief and care when they couldn't find it anywhere else. Diary saves characters from situations where, even though it seems easy for them to escape on their own, they themselves could not make it out without her help. She also helps repressed characters get to know who they are in creative ways while doing chores. I also thought more about self-care in general, like self-care in the form of signing your cast when no one else can or will. Self-care traditionally, using what you have around the house in a very sustainable fashion. Horse. Self-care when the way that you seek pleasure may, in fact, be selfless. Thinking about how care can relate to people, can relate to folklore, like that little thing you'd hear, maybe your mom, your grandma, someone, don't eat the seed in the apple, a tree will grow in your stomach. That's a little bit of care, maybe trying to not get you to eat arsenic, but here it actually happened. So Nene, this midwife character on the top, is helping TaskRabbit's sister, yes, that is her name, TaskRabbit's sister, take care of that apple tree that started to grow inside of her. And this piece became very, very, very close to reality when, right before I painted, which you can't see, the tiniest little apple plant in there, the Dobbs decision came down. I started to think about redemption arcs and the ground we walk on, with its various living bodies, both planted and visiting, coming to life to tell you that she's tired of being stepped on. And this piece is inspired by a pretty wild Dutch sculpture called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a peeing dog. And furthermore, on the peeing Dutch sculptures, there's this other sculpture that's just into water. She's tired of the way that you're looking at her, and she's just here with her water. Let me see if I can get it to, there we go. There's the video of the underside of her that was not captured in any of the images, but it's my favorite little part. Okay, getting to the next part. Furthermore, on the redemption arcs, I was thinking of Black folklore, the tar baby, American history being tarred and feathered, but defying punishment, defying being stuck, and letting, or being able to fly regardless of the tar that is weighing you down and sticking to you, using it as your power. And speaking of power, I started to bring in characters from my life who had died. So the first one, this is when it's gonna start to break down a little bit. I'm gonna start to break down. My grandfather, Pop-Pop, or Bowman, bunch of bows and arrows, but all I knew about him was from the women around him. And the stories weren't necessarily positive. And I started to think, can I start to kind of rewrite or revise this history through my work a bit? And speaking of revising history, we're coming back to the parents. This piece is inspired by a time when some of you guys really, 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 really know this process. So I'm a child, my mother is washing my hair. She does the perm, finishes. She does the shampoo, finishes. Does the conditioner, finishes. Dries my hair off with a towel. Takes the towel off, roof collapses. She cries, not because the house has just come down a bit, it's because she has to do my hair again. So here I have that after moment, the after washing depicted with her washing the hair with tears and kind of resenting the fact that she has to do this to this, this critter she's created. And then going to my father, this is GRAS, generally recognized as safe, a classification from the FDA. That means this has been used as a food additive before and we don't need to test it, right? Good, cool. So you don't know if it's safe or not. And it's inspired by my dad because his conditions started to decline kind of around when I was at the Fine Arts Work Center as a fellow, but I couldn't figure it out. So this was my mourning his past self, his healthy self. And let's see if it'll start the videos. Okay, so just a little bit of detail to show y'all. Oh, God, sorry. There we go. It might not play the second video, and I apologize for that. So these pieces take absolutely forever. I'm working with a ton of upcycled fabrics, things that are found quite literally by digging in trash cans of scraps in scrap fabric stores and beads from deconstructed jewelry and purchased alike. So here we go. when I was at Fine Arts Work Center, my dad showed up to cheer me on shortly after retirement, and it was incredible. We got to pose in front of this piece that I had at PAM. I can't remember the Provincetown Art something and Association of Museum. There we go. And it was absolutely incredible. And then fast forward to this past year, and he passes, and I get a call about that while I'm in my studio, while I'm working on my solo show, and all I can now do is think about life. What can I do to breathe life back into something? Because it just felt like all the air was sucked out of the room. So the first piece that I finished after his passing was this breathing life back into a character. Are we seeing the scene from her point of view, the way that everything flashes into existence, or are we just seeing her come back? And that's the light, that is the soul, like, still thinking about what it means. More things. So while I was working, I'm gonna go back. While I was working on the solo show, I absolutely abandoned anything that didn't go with the way that I was feeling, because if an idea didn't stick to the very slidey Teflon morning brain that I had, I just needed to abandon it. So I started thinking about, we're going into studio visit mode, so you're gonna see my thought process. These are no more finished pieces. I started thinking about ways to hide pain or distract yourself from pain. So here is a bottom character roasting a marshmallow, but also bringing the top character's leg into the fire to distract her from the pain of carving her name into her chest. I started building way more elaborate maquettes for my pieces with actual furniture, thinking about love and how all you want to do is go with them, inspired by the story of Pyramus and Thisbe. I could be mispronouncing that, but it's a star-crossed lover story. They fall in love through a wall, their parents say no, they decide to elope. She runs away from a lion on the way to the elopement spot, gets cut by something and drops her veil. Pyramus shows up and thinks she died. So he goes and falls on a knife because he can't live without her. She goes and finds him and also falls on the knife out of love. I think it's a little bit better than Romeo and Juliet. I even stepped back further to think about what even does world building mean, and can a guiding light trick us into thinking that they are the sun? I started to channel whimsy and freedom. I wish I had the full piece put together in the image, but the professional shots are coming. Whimsy and freedom when I couldn't find it anywhere at all. If I could channel it into this character, at least I could create it once and maybe again. So this piece is inspired by several different deer-type creatures, and that is the head that eventually goes on top, and it forms a circle. There are so many beads on that head, including one bead at the roof of the mouth, because deer apparently only have one tooth up there. More fun animal facts. First chickens, now this. I also started to think about what guardians can look like when you lose one. You are like, oh, maybe this afterlife deity would work. It was formerly demonized because they thought, oh, it's a snake, it's evil, like, but then they realized, oh, a snake actually has such mobility and actually aids in moving and cleaning and just drawing you in, whether it's through actually wrapping itself around you or not. And I'll show a video of what the fabrics look like up close. It is a great way to reuse scraps. So once you've used the larger pieces, you can bring them into here. Cup chain, rhinestones, for some reason, I thought this was the simple solution to quilting. I always think it's simple until I actually do it. And this one was fun. I'm going to get you close to the face and the mouth. I saw a picture that AI made of, oh no, is the video going to play? That's strange. Can someone manually click play on that one, please? Thank you. I saw an AI image of bejeweled teeth, and I was like, I think I can figure that out in real life, and it's AI, so I can take it. And I couldn't find the original image anymore, but there is that. And in general, overall, this show is thinking about the idea of yet, the temporal suspension that stretches a moment of loss, a yo-yo tethered by a string stuck in motion, and in the most literal interpretation, an angel that's not allowed to leave yet. So, thank you, and remember to hug yourself.
My mind is blown. I don't know about you all. Can we have another round of applause for Autumn Wallace? Amazing, amazing provocative work. And also thank you, Catherine, for that lovely introduction. Thank you. So I'd like to invite everyone back up to the stage. We'll do a quick little Q&A so you can ask your questions, of which I'm sure you have a million. We won't ask a million questions because there'll be time for workshops and stuff. So come on up. And I just want to remind you, we're live streaming and recording this, so if you have a question, wait for Alexis to get to you with a microphone before you ask your question. Thank you. And everyone has mics. You need to just turn them on.
So I can't sneeze into it.
You can turn it on. Yep. So who? Wait, Alexis, let me do something first. All your mics work?
Hello.
It seems like it, yes.
Yes.
Who has a question? Someone got a question. Question way over here in the opposite corner.
David, you might have to manage this.
A lot of lead up to this question, so it has to be good. I'm just curious about your process with pieces, all three of you. I mean, I'm just blown away. I was just like, I can't even think right now because I'm so overwhelmed by how inspired I am. So.
I guess we all just need time to cook with our answer, but I'll start. My process, I don't know if you saw, but I kind of like stew in ideas, and I do that wild man thing. Like there's a GIF about it with like the guy and the like pictures on the wall and the lines. Like that's how I think. I carry around my sketchbook and I write in there all the time, and then I scan that and then I put that on the wall, and it's chaos. So I really love to distill from chaos. I can elaborate on that, but I want them to answer too.
Yeah, I think that it really sort of depends on what I'm up to. I think a thing that I like to say, which might also be true, and it might not just be that I like to say it, but it might also be true, is that for me, writing is just sort of the way that I work through the kind of ongoing questions of being alive, you know? And so it's not so much about having a particular process for making work. It's just kind of like I live, things pass through me, and then I have to make something with them. Otherwise, I would kind of, I don't know what, I would short circuit. I think sometimes the way to trick stuff into coming out is I sit underneath my desk, and I try really hard not to know what the next thing I'm going to write down will be. Yeah, and somehow putting myself under my desk helps with that.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many different kinds of technologies to not like judge, not know too much or something, or not get in your own way. I think I sort of like have figured out some ways to do that in poetry. As someone who had kind of like built up stuff there, I was like, okay, I write in a like really late at night, and when my mind is sort of more fuzzy, or I write in a space that is louder, there's more distractions, I can't really hear myself think. Where it other kinds of ways to get inhibitions sort of low. And then I think that for me, actually, what would always happen was I would kind of do that in some kind of drafty form, usually by hand, and then like in the morning, whatever the morning was, like the next moment of clarity, would like start trying to put it together on the screen. And I had to really relearn that lesson actually with prose, because I was like, okay, well, essays, that's ideas, and so there's like an argument that I should make, and so I'll draft out my argument first, and then I'll know stuff, and then people will know how smart I am, and it turned out that I had to relearn how to like not know in that form, just kind of relearn all the things that I learned in poetry. Yeah.
Hello, love the talk. I'm curious when it comes to kind of like finding the overall meaning, either in a show or a book or like some body of work. Do you usually approach the work kind of with this idea of like, I want to explore kind of like the grief that I'm going through, or like Roomba, or does like Roomba and grief kind of come after you've like created a few pieces and gotten to kind of sit with like what you've put together?
Roomba and grief, yes. I think I'll start off by saying thanks for that question. I think that often there's like a process of discovery. Like I really started, I mean, like I said before, I thought that this was going to be a book of ideas and stuff that wasn't going to be like about me. So it would be like a cultural criticism. I'm looking at television programs and films and books that have to do with like technology and robots and the ways that they intersect with race and gender and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, it's not about me. And then I would get all the way through, or I would get like part of the way through the essay, and then be like, wait a second, actually this essay is about grief, or this essay is about self-love, or this essay is about like the shame of my mother. And it was often only like pushing and pushing and pushing past and digging through, underneath all the stuff that I had I'd like known that I was going to bring to the table. I'd get to the end of the first draft and be like, okay, now I know what the essay is actually about. And so then that's when I would go back to the beginning and then kind of like start again, holding that aboutness in mind. So yeah, for me, it was almost always the discovery of what the essay was about was most generative and like felt most like delicious to me when I really didn't know what it was going to be when I started. You guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard. So I also am like a person who writes like more kind of academic criticism, and so I think that with that kind of stuff, the aboutness is always there. But I think that with poetry, I go to it specifically so that I do not have to know what the aboutness is. I think that in order to market or sell a book of poems, you have to write a blurb, which is like, here is the aboutness of it. But that is always a lie that I stick on after the fact. I think that actually what it is that there is a set of ideas or a set of like other writers actually, or a set of images or a set of memories that I am like, I want to hang out with you for a little while. And so then, because I have been hanging out with in my mind, June Jordan and Lucille Clifton and Audre Lorde, it seems like it is a book about a kind of like Black feminist lineage, right? And how do I fit in that? But actually, it was just that's what I was reading. Yeah.
So you said what I was thinking, and then I got mesmerized by everything else you said, so I forgot. But essentially, like I also just, there we go, put it on at the end. I think of the works individually because when I think about the entire scheme of a show or the entire scheme of a series of work, I feel like I'm bound to that in not a cool limitations are beneficial way, but in a I'm trapped to just do this and follow it through even if my mind changes. So yeah, when the packers have the work out of my studio is when I start to develop what it's all about and the titles and who the characters are. Sometimes I know because they're recurring, and other times I just have to figure it out, like because I've just gotten to know them. So
yeah, that makes me think. I mean, something that I was thinking about when I was watching the images of your work kind of evolving is that, like, for me, and it seems like for you, I hope I'm not like putting my stuff on you, but it seems like making work is the way that like a person changes, right? It's not just that like your life changes and so then you make different kinds of work, but that you change in the making. And I feel like I know that something is done when the me that has been made in the work is different enough from the one who started it. Then I can be like, okay, that's a book because these aren't the same person enough anymore. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Is it okay? Oh, thank you. Is it okay, like 2 quick ones? Very, very quick. Okay, thank you. Okay, first one, kind of piggybacking off of what you all were just saying, in the changing of the self, when you are toward the end of that, or you're toward the end of the creation of that work and you have thereby changed by that point, how do you stay in the work? Because maybe you're like, oh, I've changed so much, I'm not even feeling this anymore. Like, I've heard artists who be like, the moment I put this out, I didn't feel that way at all. And we're all basking in it. We're like, oh my God, we love your work. And you're like, I don't care about that anymore. I've moved on. How do you, I guess, stay there? And do you want me to go ahead and just ask my other one now? Okay. And you guys can just kind of combine your answers. The second one was, if you're thinking of something way down the line, you're like, I know that this book will not be, or this piece, whatever the work is, this work will not be complete for like 10, 15 years. You're like, oh my God, I have this huge idea. I don't know what I can do with that right now because I have to finish this right now, but I want to work on that. How do you also stay in that work? Like, can you just kind of describe what your brain looks like over the course of, I don't know, a decade or however long it takes you to work on this thing that you know you have to do, but you just aren't there yet, and you have to focus on what's in front of you?
I feel like the writers should go first because paintings are really fast compared to writing a book.
Are they? Really? How long does it take you to make a painting?
If I had to, 3 days. Not anymore, but if I had to, you know.
Well, this is also the thing that I've discovered about essays, is that it takes a lot longer. You know, you can kind of bang out a poem in 20 minutes, and this essay game is a lot of typing, it turns out. So that's something I've learned. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start with the kind of like long game thing first. I think that honestly, I don't know if I would recommend like selling a book on spec to anyone, because it is harrowing, you know, to like be like, now I'm going to be contractually obligated to write this book that doesn't exist yet. Like, it's kind of, it's very scary, especially if you haven't written a book like that before. But I will also say that for me, knowing that I was going to like I could not legally abandon this project was actually really helpful, because I am my attention goes to other things, but being like, okay, I really have to actually stay in this and like hang out with it for a long time, and I will change as it changes, etc. Like over, I think I started writing some of the essays like in 2020, 2019. So yeah, I think that's one. It's kind of a glib answer, but I think like being, finding ways to force yourself to be in it, it could be maybe is my tip.
I'm going to say something completely impractical. I feel like that's practical advice, and I'll say something
it's
impractical.
Practical, but it's also like maybe I'm telling everybody to get yourselves into a financial trap, which I don't know if that's really good. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. So I think that I definitely have that problem of I finish something and then I never ever want to read it again, and I don't want anybody else ever to read it again. I want to pretend that it does not exist. But weirdly or not weirdly, but I think that I feel that most about my prose and my sort of more scholarly writing. In the middle of this book of poems, there is a long series to Polly Murray, which I wrote specifically because I wrote an academic essay about them, and I was like, I am ashamed to have written that, so now I need to write a different thing so that nobody will read the essay. But this is to say that to me, it's helpful to think that there are at least two kinds of becoming changed by work. I think that when I'm writing an essay or when I'm trying to get to the end of an idea, it's like once I've gotten there, then it becomes boring to go back to the idea. If I've had the idea, it becomes boring to go back, and it becomes sort of embarrassing, actually, to not already know the thing that I did not yet know. But I think that with poems, and I think that maybe with things that come less from the head and more from the other bit, they're sort of events that one can inhabit again. And it feels good sometimes to touch the older parts of yourself, to let them live again. That feels like a weird thing to say, but my first book especially, which I wrote when I was in the middle of transition, it was good to read those poems and to be able to reanimate this part of myself that I felt like I was leaving behind. So maybe the practical advice is to say it might be useful to think about the projects that you have to stay with as the parts of yourself that you have to stay with, yeah.
So thank you all for speaking first to give me time to think about my answer. I realize that I encounter and create problems for myself with each piece. And this is great for having different and new ideas, but it also makes the process really hard. And that's what keeps me in it. The climbing up the hill of I've created a formal issue that I can't find any other artists who have done, but I can maybe synthesize a bunch of artists who have done it, and maybe if I try that color and go in from there and photograph it this way, I can figure it out. So yes, by the end of it, I have been completely changed, and I am so tired that I had to fight that thing for so long. But when I go back and look at it, or when I go back and see the story that I'm depicting, I'm like, oh, that's why I fought with that critter. I had to fight to birth it or whatever. And I think I missed the second part of the question.
Staying in a long project.
A long game. I cycle through ideas, and just having a bunch of things that I draw, a bunch of things that I keep in sketchbooks, I will put them up on the wall and create things every time I'm just trying to make something new. And there are times every year, all the time, when I'm like, I'm not old enough for that idea yet, there are things that I've been sitting on and hadn't been able to solve for years that I finally will go back to that old sketchbook and be like, maybe I'm old enough for it. And sometimes it'll kick my butt. And other times I'm like, I'm old enough now. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I see the long game projects, at least now.
Thank you, everyone. Can we have one more big round?
Yes, there will be people. They're signing in back here. In a moment, we have books for sale over here. I will eventually be working with the Square to get books sold. If you have not gotten your folder yet, you can do that over here. The folders of fun are located over here in the back of the room. If you want to do me a real solid and check your name off on this sheet when you take one, I would love it. And if you don't, we'll all survive. And if today's speakers will hang out for 2 seconds so I get a group photo, I would really appreciate it. All right, thank you. I hate to interrupt this Kiki so much, but will my two lovely book signers come sign some books? I feel terrible because you guys are all having a good time. I have pens. I can get Sharpies if you want me to get some Sharpies.